Today in the 5-minute saltwater aquarium guide, we're gonna feed these fish. There's a right way and a wrong way, and you're gonna learn what it is. Hey, I'm Ryan, your host of Beers TV in the 5-minute saltwater aquarium guide. This is a clear, simplified, and direct path to setting up that first successful reef tank. It's time to talk feeding these fish. The challenge here is twofold. First, we want to get them the right nutrition, but second, overdoing it is the cause of all kinds of issues. Today, we're going to find that balance. Starting with nutrition, none of the fish we selected have really complex nutritive needs, and almost any food will keep them alive if that's the only goal. However, these little guys are our new pets, and the goal is really more than that. If we treat them right, some of them will be with us for decades. In terms of nutritive care and getting the right foods, I believe there are 4 main concerns: nutritive content, similarity to their natural diet, coloration, and nutritive density. You can approach this in a variety of ways, but I believe a mix of TDO Chroma Boost pellets, Hikari Seaweed Extreme, and frozen Canadian mysis is going to produce some of the best results. Starting with nutritive content, that primarily means protein and fat content. Protein is what the fish will use to build muscle tissue, and fat is one of the primary sources of energy. Almost every pack of food will have protein and fat content right on the label. With dry foods, 50% protein and fat in the low teens is a pretty good standard to meet or exceed. TDO Chroma Boost pellets being a BRS favorite in achieving that. With frozen foods, which have a lot more water weight, 12% protein and upwards of 2% fat represents some of the better food options. Canadian mysis like PE and the Hikari version clearly labeled Canadian, meeting that standard. It's important that it's Canadian mysis because some of the other mysis types have half the energy content. Second, with similarity to natural diet, I'll say frozen foods seem to be a bit more palatable and similar to fish's natural diet, but this really means the primary ingredients are aquatic-based and not corn, soy, fruits, or terrestrial animals. Similarity to natural diet also means incorporating foods natural to a fish's diet. For instance, tangs eat a lot of algae, so incorporating algae into their diet is valuable, likely even necessary for normal metabolic function. The Hikari Seaweed Extreme is 67% algae and one of the easiest ways to achieve that goal. Third, and similar to that, is coloration. Many fish cannot synthesize desirable color pigments on their own, at least not in the quantity desired by Reef Aquarius. The addition of green and red nutritive pigments via diet is a very effective way of really getting that color pop from your fish. In this case, we're providing primarily with the red astaxanthin content of Chroma Boost pellets and green pigments in the Seaweed Extreme. Fourth is nutritive density, meaning pellets are about 5 to 10 times as nutrient dense by weight as frozen foods, meaning they can eat much less and get the same nutrition. But that also means 5 to 10 times as easy to overfeed pellets as frozen foods. Maybe worse because pellets are kept at the tank and tempt us to feed all the time, whereas frozen foods require us to go to the freezer first. So it's just a reality that those that feed frozen foods are just way less likely to overfeed their tank as pellets, so just keep that in mind. So the net effect here is I find a mix of the Chroma Boost, Seaweed Extreme, and mysis offer a varied nutritive diet that serves the needs that we discussed here today. My suggestion is feed the frozen one day and then the next day a mix of the 2 pellets. Getting the right amount can be tricky. Take the amount that you want to feed because you like feeding the fish and cut that down by like 80%, and that's probably the right amount. It's a very tiny amount. Their bellies are small. I do recommend one of these feeding rings to allow the food to hydrate and sink. The rings tend to make it easier for the fish to get as much as possible of the food that you added rather than letting it get lost in the tank. If you find yourself overfeeding, this is what's going to happen. All that extra food is going to break down into nitrate and phosphate in the tank. Nitrate and phosphate are essentially plant fertilizer, so they feed the undesirable algae growth, something common in new tanks. So in that spirit, there are 2 surefire signs of overfeeding: algae growth or continually rising nitrate and phosphate levels, which will eventually lead to algae growth. I'll say in a new tank where algae is a concern, most people are shooting for nitrate in that low 2 to 5 parts per million range and phosphate in the 0.1 to 0.2 range, but it's less about hitting that perfect number and more about making sure it isn't continually rising. If nitrate and phosphate is continually rising, it's simple: feed less and it will stop. If you can't help it and you just like feeding them, you'll have to do more frequent water changes or up your filtration game with something like a better skimmer, filter socks to catch the waste, or refugium that grows algae remotely to uptake the waste from adding too much food. So while you pick up your food, consider a HANA phosphate checker. They just work way better than test kits at low levels, and I find NIOS nitrate test kits to be the easiest to perform and read. It's been a long wait, but today the corals are going in the tank. If you want to see how this turns out with corals, that's the next episode. The entire 5-minute guide is always available here, but this tank is about to get corals. Click here to see what's going in the tank.